Hey, how's it going? All just thought I would use this holiday I have to put up a couple videos, get my thoughts out there, and it's been kind of a lazy day today, just resting. A lot of rain fell here in Houston, so just friendly like tip. I tried to drive around earlier today, kind of in the middle of it, thinking that it wouldn't be an issue, but Houston floods really fast, and the amount of water that falls here is a lot, and Harvey was just one example, but it's just I was able to make it back, but just be careful out there. It's better to err on the side of caution, and stuff. So there's notice a lot of people out there still driving like me, but a lot of different roadways were blocked and stuff. So especially if you live in a city that doesn't drain well, uh, it's better to be cautious. So this video I want to talk about though is what we worship, and I just made a quick list of things that this society and all of us have taken part in it, contributed to it, whether we knew we were doing it or not, and directly, indirectly, and all that. So I'm definitely not speaking of my hands being clean, but this is what we've been sort of conditioned to worship, what's been propositioned to us, and obviously it looks like more and more people are catching up to the scam, so and I do feel like one of the things in life in general, all the different interactions and instances are to see what we will fall for, so to speak, what we will be willing to worship. And Jesus, being the highest spirit on the right, was tested, where he was asked, if he would worship Satan, Satan would give him, the kingdoms or all the nations, or whatever he promised him. So he was basically asked to essentially worship Satan, and take his place under him, and then Satan could offer him all he could offer, which was things on the earth. And obviously Jesus, we know how that went, but I feel like that interaction, we have that daily, like in almost constantly, throughout the day. We can be propositioned to worship various things, and these are things that I've noticed just in my own life, that I've either worshipped or been propositioned to worship. And thankfully I'm given the understanding now that to peel this, to undo this, and it's not easy, which is just being aware of this is one thing, but then now really understanding and knowing that it's evil to do this is really hard, actually. And hopefully we have, all of us, but me in particular, I have enough time to undo these things, because they're ridiculous. Like now, especially, like it's hard to function in society unless you are involved in something like this, because it'll make you an outcast completely. So just going down the list. So what we are propositioned to worship, it's one, people who have acquired a large number of digital credits, which I, jokingly but truthfully, it's money. But and really, that's what I see money is in this society. It's just like you go and do certain things, like go to work or go on the stock market or buy cryptos or whatever you do, and it's like all of it is essentially just giving you a bigger number that you can see on screen or on your phone. And then that's like basically a token, which you now are kind of forced to use exclusively in, or what I say, instead of use, I call it play, in this economy. And I put play and economy in quotes. So play is just like, it's basically you're not allowed to do anything sort of very educational, like aside from travel, which is great, but for the most part, stuff that's available to us is largely like amusement and distractions. And that's our economy, which, that's not an economy, just to consume, to, drink, bars and restaurants and clubs and all that kind of stuff. And just all that type of thing. It's an economy like that. with the allocations that it has for retail and medicine, and all the different. Now I've noticed too, just driving around, that whenever there's like retail closings, a lot of the stuff is now just replaced by emergency centers, or medical stores and stuff. So, it just shows that this type of an economy can't sustain itself, because those are things that people fundamentally don't need, in a healthy economy, or need a lot of. We don't need that many stores, to satisfy people's true needs, and we shouldn't need that much medical representation in brick and mortar if you have a healthy body of people. And so that's one thing that we are inclined or kind of suggested to worship, which is a good way to put it. Athletes who put a ball in a hole or a net. So this, like, if you break down, and I'm a golfer and I played basketball, so I'm making fun of myself, but it's like a lot of times when I take like sports seriously, I realize like how stupid it is, and it's like usually it's only after the round or the game or whatever. But now more and more, when I catch myself more often now when I'm playing golf, I'm like, even like professional golf, like I'm like, this is like, it's sad, that this is kind of all we have to sort of entertain ourselves or to view other people doing, LeBron going to LA or whatever. It's like fundamentally people are talking about, a great deal of chatter is around a guy who can put a ball in a net. And it's like, I really do think that obviously there's a lot of evil and a lot of pain, in this generation, in this dispensation, but there's a lot of comedy. I suspect people, the spirit world looking down upon us, I can't even imagine what they think, of this. But that's a major thing. Women who wear next to nothing and talk about how they feel, and oftentimes use their kids as props for Instagram. So this is another major, temptation to worship women, and their body and all of that, and to put that on a pedestal. People who don't ask questions, it's like people who just kind of go along with the mainstream and all of that. People who have a large, group around them, and all that kind of stuff. So women especially, these two are kind of related. Women will kind of look for people who worship them, but also who worship like the masses, and go along with the status quo. Politicians who, and one thing I did mention in a prior video, I believe, is that if God overnight decided to make women people, or their vibration be one of like valuing truth seekers, and people, and value not just men, but just, value people, men and women around them who pursue truth, and, whatever level they're at in that, and mated based on that criteria, the whole world would completely flip upside down, quickly. And so, women do hold quite a bit of power, unfortunately in this case, but that's a major thing, we have to be aware of, in the very least. It's like definitely pleasing men in general is a bad thing, and then pleasing women also has very, very dangerous side effects. So we can't be involved in people pleasing, fundamentally. And so so people who don't ask questions go with the mainstream. Politicians who read speeches written by other people proclaiming their love for people but following through on none of it. So even Obama, he duped a lot of people, and I wasn't up on basically a lot of the Russian vids and what the Hebrew Israelites teach at that time. And there were aspects of when I saw his speech or listened to his speeches, and I was in Chicago at the time when he was like officially won, and like there was a genuine sort of optimism, like he sort of was saying the right things, or at least slightly, everything sounds better than compared to what comes out of Bush's mouth. But, there was a genuine sort of optimism, that maybe he actually kind of cares, and like the healthcare and all that stuff that he was pushing. Now we know it is of pernicious intent. Like there's RFID chip stuff, in that legislation, in that literature. So we know now Obama is one of these people who simply does just read speeches that other people have written, and proclaims his love for people, but does not follow through with it in any meaningful way that has any impact on the masses. Another thing we worship: people who run fast, work fast, have an answer fast, fast. And this is a very important point as a ushering in the RFID microchip, because everything about that is fast, immediate, this, that, and the other. And I saw another video earlier about healthcare being used as a main thing to push the RFID chip. So they have like controlled opposition. God has set up a dialogue here where they'll introduce it. Some people will say, oh, it's crazy. And then people will be relieved because like they'll be like, okay, I can relate to that. It sounds crazy. But then they'll kind of hit you with the gas, at the end. And they'll say, well, actually for medical, it would be really nice and all that. So this kind of dialogue that God uses to sort of kind of trap people that he's already predestined to take it, it's all in line with this idea that everything needs to be like fast, and could be more accurate. We could deliver drugs quicker to you that you might save your life and all this. But the reality is the chip is just basically keeping people here longer in hell, because this existence has to be hell, because nothing beyond this could be livable that's any worse. That's the way I see it. Like, there is nothing worse than an existence like this. Yeah, I'm talking even for the upper class. This is hell, because the upper class, like the further you go up the pyramid, this sort of idea that knowledge is up at the pyramid for the elite, and then the base are like all of us, and they use pyramid stuff on our dollar bills and all that. Russian vids broke that down, amazing. And so the further you are at the top, you might know more, but you're not allowed to say very much. You're not allowed to share it. So you're basically restricted. Let's say at the bottom we don't know as much, but we are allowed to like freely say whatever we want. It's like no one's going to take us seriously, or we don't have a broad audience, but we're not restricted in that way. So even for those at the quote unquote top, the elite, they're living mental slavery as well, because God has given them like a shorter list of things they're allowed to talk about. They're not allowed to talk about the injustices of slavery in the past or right now, central banking, synagogue of Satan, flat earth, they can't bring these things out. So they're in bondage as well. And it's just the lower classes are in mental and physical bondage. So the upper elite, they might not be like doing, arduous slave labor. But you never know what they're doing behind closed doors. Maybe not physical labor, but we don't know what kind of weird stuff they got, going on. Bohemian Grove is just one of the examples. I'm sure that is more in the mainstream now, but I don't even want to know, some of the stuff that they're into. So, so this has to be hell. The notion that God would create a spirit, his own energy, an extension of himself, to burn in torment forever just doesn't make sense, because that's a waste of time for God, because that spirit that is there burning or whatever, that's a part of him, that spirit didn't make itself. So God would be essentially taking his own energy and just burning it. So there's real aspects of burning, with missiles and stuff, and this final world war, which I believe, is close by. But, one would also think that there's, sort of metaphorical, it's like certain things, that certain ideas, certain spirits, certain energies that God is extinguishing or just discontinuing, and stuff. But, this has to be, hell that we're living in. So another thing is, and I wanted to contrast that, just to play on words. We worship people who run fast, work fast, have fast answers, fast, fast, fast. But like, what about those who just fast? Like abstain from food, eat slowly. For lack of a better way to define it. Pray, which is an element of slowing things down. And connecting with the non-physical. And most importantly, I would say, is the courage to speak for the oppressed, in a real way, not just like, oh, I love everybody and like all this. It's like, no, where's the dialogue for the poor people? Like when did you hear a politician ever talk about anything real, tangible, funding, getting distributed to impact, the poor, which, down, I'm here in downtown Houston, and you see a huge homeless population, and it's just absolutely unnecessary with the amount of resources that are available. Another thing that is important, and this kind of goes in line with people who don't ask questions and follow the mainstream, is how many followers have you procured, which you like paid for, acquired through like maybe deception, or you stole, you take from other people, with your product or whatever, you yourself. So that's a major thing, that people who have a large following were kind of in a suggestive way, asked to worship. People who work nonstop, and it's like, this is basically a robot. A robot or a computer is something that can be programmed to work continually, and this is the ambition of the so-called elite. Or God is doing this, and he's basically telling us, like, I feel like he's bringing us right to the brink of the point where we can wake up to realize, what evil is, in its full bloom. And it's removing God from the equation and essentially making us into robots, who will, listen to authority and have no faith. And so once you remove God, you don't need to have faith, so you're basically just like an animal or a robot. However you describe it, you just do what you're told to do, and, that's it. And so the chip is obviously very much related to that, ambition as well. So people who work nonstop are applauded, and like somehow that's a virtue when, it's anti-God, it's satanic, it goes against the human body, it goes against the design. We're not designed to work nonstop. If that were the case, we wouldn't sleep. God would just make our bodies repair in different ways, just simply through eating or simply through work potentially. It would just be a completely different design, of our human body. So that is something that is satanic and is so pervasive and put on a pedestal. It's there basically designed to kill you, and get you cancer and make you stupid. Because when you work nonstop, you're not able to stop and reflect and be creative, in the very least. We're also kind of indirectly asked to worship people who speak of God, but in no real terms. Like, you can't actually, even a lot of the Hebrew Israelite groups, I know I'm the hardest on GMS, but really all of them, you can't really speak about God or Jesus Christ or Yahushua in any real terms. Like, once you get into that, they won't have anything. They won't say anything in response, so even them, they'll take away God in real sort of day-to-day terms. Also, last thing I have was people who think we can have heaven on earth without God leading us or him being present. It's like this new world order. We are one, everybody. God loves everybody kind of movement, where these people are creating a mantra and creating their own, tenets, of what heaven will be like here on earth. And it's obviously deceptive. It's, it's got a malicious intent. They're not following through with what they're saying. Not everybody is equal, because they're not helping everybody equally. The whole system is only designed to help, those at the top kind of transfer and suction more and more wealth upwards, and that's just the way it is for, that's God's design. So that in and of itself goes against their main, principle of everybody's equal. So they're not following through on it anyway, but, not like we believe them, anyway, anything they say, but let's just say that they were sincere about it. They're doing a horrible job following through on it. So, this is where we are right now. It's really like, a society and a culture and a earth really that's completely void of faith. You know, we have a lot of discussions, a lot of debates, a lot of stuff going on, but you know, really God is not anywhere in here. You know, he's just he's a talking point. You know, and you know. We don't know what the whole purpose of this thing is, but you know, I'm just pointing out some things that I think are very obvious to people nowadays.